Hello everybody, my name is Jared and today I'm going to be doing a video on making a webcomic. More specifically, my video today is about the process of beginning a webcomic, so from the very basic start of the idea all the way up until the process of actually making the comic. If you don't know me and don't know my channel, hello, I'm Jared. I am a cosplayer and an artist. I go by Mahogoro Cos and Mahogoro Art. And yeah, that's me. Now in this video I'm going to be sharing with you basically my process on this. The stuff that I use, it does not require a lot of stuff at all. And just basically what happens for me to be able to make a fully fledged webcomic that exists. First of all, I will start with sort of introducing myself a little bit. My webcomic is called I Am a Criminal. It is a LGBT friendly webcomic. The majority of the characters in it are LGBT and it is based on D&D. It is a fantasy webcomic. It features a lot of races that you would usually find in a fantasy / D&D comic, but a lot of them have sort of like a twist on them and kind of probably won't look like what you're expecting these races to look like. Another webcomic that I am really early in the process of making is a webcomic called, well, this is its like temporary name, but it's called Girls' School Radio. Girls' School Radio is a horror webcomic. It is again LGBT and it is about a all-girls boarding school where paranormal things happen. What I then do is I will start something which we all know, it's a sketchbook. This is my sketchbook that I've actually done a tour of already. This is already on my YouTube, so if you want to watch it and actually get an in-depth look at this sketchbook, you're very welcome to. But this is where the process really begins for me. A sketchbook is a really good place to start with developing character ideas, and I always start all of my comics with the idea behind the characters first, because I always go character first on all of my comics. This is the sort of stuff that I'll do for developing a character. And then once I've got some more detail into these developments, I will move on to the next process. The next process is a development book. This is my development book for I Am a Criminal and my development book for Girls' School Radio. And yeah, I'll get more in depth as to what a development book is in just a minute. If I'm looking down as well, I have got a list of all of the things that I need to cover, so sorry if I'm a little bit What I would say other than the sketchbook and the development book you need are whatever art materials you prefer to use when you are mind mapping and drafting and just coming up with things. My favourite tools are watercolour because they're really diverse and you can make a lot of colours out of them. Micron pens, ideally the black or the sepia ones, those are my favourites. I like to keep my lines really thin, but honestly whatever you prefer. I also like to use my tablet. I have an iPad Pro and I have an Apple Pencil. I think, yeah, the Apple Pencil I have is Generation 2. Be careful when you're buying either of those items because the Apple Pencil, certain iterations of it only work with certain iPads, so yeah, check that your actual tech works together. And that is optional, obviously. I do think though if you're going to do a webcomic you should use some kind of tablet or digital process. It will make you a lot faster, you'll be able to reuse frames and things like that, and sketchwork, everything will be sort of more linear. It's just going to be a lot easier for you. I know that there are people who do comics traditionally, but it's a lot easier in digital, and if this is going to be your first comic, I would definitely start with digital. I also use a printer. I have a home printer, it's just a cheap one. I do not need a particularly expensive printer, and I need glue and scissors. And that is really all you need to get started with developing your comic. Right, hi, weird angle, I know. But we're doing this. So once you've got everything that you need, what I usually start with is I'm going to start on what I would call phase 1 development. For this, I'm going to move into a top-down angle so you can actually see what I'm doing with my hands and have a look at my development book. But yeah, so you're not going to see my face for a little bit. Going down here now. So this is my development book. The front of it is for I Am a Criminal, and the back of it is for Girls' School Radio. We'll get back to what this is in a minute because I'm going to use the I Am a Criminal version. In here I just stick down various different versions of what I might do with the main characters. Gail is the lead character, I would say, and then there is Hannah, who I would say is kind of her side protagonist, and then Jay, who's another side protagonist. So there's a trio of girls who are the main group, but the absolute main one is Gail. Then I start doing mood boards. Now I stuck those in at the beginning, but all I really had at the point where I was drawing most of these was that Girls' School Radio would be set in an all-girls school, it would be a horror, and it would be a woman-loving woman or lesbian comic. So all the characters that have a lot of focus are LGBT women. I wasn't sure what style it was going to be. I knew I wanted it to be based on a radio show or like a podcast or a live stream vlogging kind of style, but obviously a comic. And so yeah, that's basically what I had. So I took some images that I thought had the same energy as what I was working on. So here we have kind of background ideas. This is the outside. Inside ideas. Their school is almost like a red brick. It's very, very, very old. Quintessentially British kind of building. And then I also did a mood board for the aesthetic of the actual show. The show is a horror, so I've put down everything that had a similar energy to what I wanted. Here particularly I've done a focus on aesthetics, so either monster aesthetics, colour aesthetics, that kind of thing. Just getting an idea for the feel of the comic. This is where I'm going to put the mood board for monster development and stuff like that. Again, just getting an idea of what the monsters in it are going to look like. And then I'm going to do mood boards for the rest of the girls as well. I've also done a bit of a mood board. I won't super let you read this, but the mood board should just have the energies that you want from it. So little quick, fast notes that you want to be a focus for your comic. So the kind of things you might feature, the kind of sort of styling of it, anything that makes you think about your comic, put it in there. And with that, I will move on to what I refer to as phase 2, which is the sort of final phase of the development process. With that, I'm going to be going on to the section for I Am a Criminal, because that is my currently running webcomic. And this, you'll see, is very similar to what was at the beginning that I skipped over in Girls' School Radio. What I do here is I have a little list of things that I'd like to do to aid my process on making the comic. For this, I will have which characters are going to be featuring in the chapter that I'm currently working on, and I make character spreads and turnarounds for each of them. I will show you what I mean by that, but there's only 5 main characters in the first chapter of I'm a Criminal. It's a very long form comic, and yeah, so I'll have a turnaround, a character spread, then I will also do some background planning for the backgrounds that require a lot of visual detail, and then I will have a prop or vehicle sheet, so anything that again needs a lot of focus, so a prop that a character has a lot and needs to be consistent, or a very detailed prop, or even a very detailed prop or vehicle, will all go into this section. So then we'll move on to what these are. These are my original designs, so these are the very first concepts for the characters. Briar's design came to me very quickly. I won't go into detail on these because I actually did videos on this first development stage on my channel. Again, I will link those. But these are the main characters: Briar, Nathaniel, her brother, Baitor is a tiefling, Shrike, who is a human, Elishan, who is an Asar, and then Rodamel. These characters that are in this bit are going to feature in later parts of the comic, so I won't dwell on these at all. Varys version 2, because there's 2 versions of him, Haven, and yeah. Then what I'll usually move on to once I've done those initial sketches is trying to draw all of the characters together once I've got that idea of what they're going to look like. This should be close to your final design, but it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly your final design, because obviously things keep changing, you're still early in the process, but this will tell you how tall all the characters are next to each other and also their proportions, which is really important, because if you are developing a comic and you've never drawn your characters next to each other, their proportions are probably going to be super off when you actually draw them next to each other, unless your anatomy is incredible. But yeah, try drawing your characters together as much as possible. So here we've got, I'll move this so you can see. So we've got my very first height chart, just to experiment with their height designs. And then here we've actually got their lineup. The lineup is just, again, basic. Things will change, but it's just to get an idea of how their heights are going to sit with each other. At this point, I had pretty figured out what the characters look like, so I actually started a watercolour series, and I stuck them in here to help me keep my characters consistent. But yeah, this watercolour series, they are all full colour A4 watercolours. These are just little scanned versions of each of the characters. So Briar, Nathaniel, Baitor, Shrike, Rodamel, Varys, Aloy, and Haven. And every single one of these has a lot of references to important parts about the character, because you'll want these beautiful, moody artworks. These are definitely not necessarily for development, but help me in keeping my characters consistent. And this is the thing that helps me keep my characters consistent the most. This is what I meant by a character turnaround. This is a rotating version of your character from as many angles as you can possibly do, but these are, I would say, the minimum angles that you want to cover. And this means that when you are like, what does the back of my character's outfit or hair look like? You can literally just go straight to your development book, and here you have it. Your character from every angle possible. Here I will also feature things like alternate parts of their outfit, if they have a part of their outfit that they take off or put on and things like that. And occasionally I will also have weapons if the weapon is attached to them all of the time. So yeah, here is Briar's. This is Baitor's. Nathaniel's. Shrike's. Elishan's. And yeah, at this point you should also be sort of going through your head. I haven't written any of these down because I was going to be showing this book, and I will write them down when I'm not going to be showing it to the internet. But you should write down at this point anything that you really need for your character, so stuff like personality points, backstory, relationships with other characters, anything like that. Like, as an example, with Briar, she is actually the half-sister of Nathaniel. So on these pages I will also write down things like that, where they know each other, how old they are, anything like that, so I can make sure I'm keeping everything consistent and I have all of this information already ready to go. Now, my development is very detailed, I can admit that, but this sort of stuff really helps with making sure that your comic is consistent, so people don't pick on you for your character's hairstyle changing in every frame. And also it can help you with the development of the plot, which is coming up next. Now, I will say that character development and plot kind of go hand in hand, so they keep developing as you kind of develop the other thing. I have been developing the plot at the same time as the characters, but sometimes if you just develop the character and world, your plot will kind of come out as you go. So yeah, there's some visual development for backgrounds and world build and stuff and colours that I want to use. Sort of rich pastels. Yeah, this stuff you can't see. The bit that I was saying that you can't see is my thumbnailing and plotting section. With thumbnailing and with plot, it's kind of hard to explain. To go into a bit more detail on kind of what you are doing in the development book, instead of just me showing you mine, I've got like a checklist here that I can explain to you what I do. Now, I have obviously the things that I like to cover in my thing, so detailed character designs, you want to have those done before you even start the comic. Everybody always keeps saying like, oh, just start. But if you don't actually know what your characters are going to look like when you start your comic, you are definitely, and I mean definitely, going to get to a point where you're like, oh, I wish I'd changed this about my character, but I can't now because I've already put them in. And obviously you can, but it sort of makes your comic inconsistent looking. And if you are the sort of person like me where you actually want to print your comic at some point, you really, really, really need to cement those character designs early, because you don't want them to just randomly change. Like, one of the things that happened, like, changing last minute for me was Beetle's skin tone. Beetle is a tiefling, and originally he was purple, as you can see in the book, but I didn't want to do a purple tiefling because I'm actually, around the time that I was about to release this, we got really into Critical Role, and they have a purple tiefling. And while Beetle isn't based on Molly Mork, I didn't want them to look similar. And with Beetle being a long-haired purple tiefling, I was like, it was a bit close for me, so I wanted to change it. We then made him blue, and again, blue didn't really work because one of the characters he introduced, because one of the characters that he spends a lot of time with is Haven, and Haven is a blue Aasimar. And Haven, I couldn't change his colour scheme because he's actually based on a gem. So yeah, it had to be Beetle that changed. It is one of those things that you are going to come across while you're working on a comic, is those like weird details that are going to end up throwing you off completely, and you're going to be like, great, amazing, now what am I going to do? So please just cement all of your character designs that are important early on. You will thank yourself later. Personality and backstory. First of all, personality-wise, make sure every single personality that you've written, if not complements, contrasts a character that you've also got in the comic. If your comic is like mine, where there's a lot of characters in it, try and make sure that there are no characters in it that just are kind of there. You want everybody's backstories and personalities and things to bring the plot together and to help complement the plot, not to just sort of be drifting in the background. One of the problems we had while developing the early part of the comic was that we found that a couple of our characters were just kind of boring, only when next to other characters that were way more interesting. So you want to have a group that really, really enriches each other and brings out the most interesting version of each other. I will go into a little bit more detail on that when I do my video on how I actually make my comic. But just in this development phase, write down brief ideas about like what personalities they have and the things that have happened in their backstory. Another thing that I always like to do is ask what the characters want and what the characters are lacking. A good way to sum this up is want versus need. So in the case of Briar really, really wanted to explore and to see the world and things like that. And her need is actually a completely different thing, which I can't really touch on without spoilers, but basically you want to have these ideas in mind because it helps you figure out where the plot's going to go. If you are not writing the whole plot at once, like it's a really long form comic and it's going to be episodic and they're going to like deal with an issue and then move on to the next thing, at least have an idea of where you want to end. Just an idea. Fully develop the arc that you're working on, have a really detailed idea of where it's going to go, but please do not go, there's this beautiful arc all written. Now what? Because if your characters don't have an ending and don't have character arcs, people will know and they'll realise that you're just winging it. There have been a lot of comic projects where I feel like that was the reason the comic actually went flat. Really, really old internet thing here that's going to show my age, but has anyone ever read the comic Hannah Is Not a Boy's Name? That was an amazing comic. It was really, really well written, and the art was beautiful. But I got the feeling quite early into it that the artist didn't actually know where the plot was supposed to go, and then they disappeared. So, conspiracy theory, I think that they left probably because they didn't actually know where their comic was going to go. I have developed fully the first arc of my comic, and the second arc, and the third arc. Arcs, they're kind of almost like chapters. It's just like a little part of your comic where something happens. There is a plot that begins, has a middle, and has an end. But then it's not the whole story. But so I've developed about 4 arcs in a fair amount of detail. The first one complete detail, and then the other one's a fair amount of detail. But I also know where my comic's ending. I know where each character needs to be at the end, and I need the things that they do to get them to that ending. So just have those little bits in mind. You do not want to start off a comic and then realise you've shot yourself in the foot and can't finish it because of something you've already done. Do your turnarounds, that's a really important part. If you don't want to write your comic, as in write it out as a script, do plot beats. That helps me because I'm dyslexic and absolutely hate writing. Plot beats are basically stuff like character needs to be here, character meets this person, character does this, and then you can actually write your comic as you draw it. It helps me, I just do thumbnails and that helps me figure out what I'm going to do. I am going to have people in the comments being like, write a script. Ugh, I hate writing. Sorry, I'm not gonna. But if you want to, by all means do it. When you're doodling your character, give them personalities. Don't just doodle them standing still, doodle them moving and showing their personality in poses, because it will help you later on when you're drawing them in the comic. I can't stress enough how important it is to get comfortable drawing characters. Draw them over and over and over, doodle them, make them your muscle memory, because that will make sketching your comic later so much easier. Design your world. This one's really important and really neglected in the comic industry and like fandom. So few comics, I think, actually have backgrounds or worlds around them. Like, I think the one that suffers from this the most is probably the one that actually would get away with it the most, which is Slice of Life. Slice of Life comics nearly always are in like a white room. Like there's nothing happening, and I understand that that's a totally different format, but if you do want to set your thing in, say, space, or in my case, a forest and a whole like world around it, draw it and also develop it. So figure out what do trees look like where you are, what does this planet that your characters have gone to look like, what does this prison that your characters are in look like. Just even the littlest hint of backgrounds will make your comic so much more professional looking. I go a bit hard on my backgrounds, honestly. I probably shouldn't draw them in so much detail because it slows me down a lot, but I am one of those weirdos who likes drawing backgrounds. And I like seeing backgrounds, so more people should do backgrounds in their comics. Maybe limit yourself, try one detailed background a page, minimum. You can do that. I believe in you. You can totally do it. Everyone acts like their art style means that they can't draw anything else, and anybody who has been drawing for a while knows that we all learnt to draw other things. I don't know a single person who draws cartoony or anime who hasn't drawn realism at least once. And again, I feel like everyone who draws has about 4 different styles they do draw in. I might be speaking for myself, but I feel like I have like my realistic style, my more detailed like art style, and then my cutesy style, and those ones I'll use indiscriminately between different things. Just pick which style you're more comfortable in for this comic, or what suits the comic that you're working on. Yeah, have fun. Play with your art style. Play with materials. Play with, if you're going to do digital, play with different brushes, different colouring styles. I do cell shading with a little bit of blending and stuff like that. But yeah, play with whatever. You could do a painterly style if you wanted to. It would take you 6,000 years, I would assume, but you could totally do it. I'll show you the thumbnails from a page that's already up. Okay, these are my thumbnails. So as you can see, they just have the script written underneath them, so the dialogue, and maybe an action written underneath them as well, so I can be 100% on what's happening, but mostly it's just a really, really rubbish drawing of the panel, and it just gets across what I need to happen in that panel. Then I will usually go into the actual page thumbnails, so I'll thumb out what I want the pages to look like, and yeah, that's basically that. This is how I figure out what my pages are going to look like. I will go into more detail of that later, because this is not about making a comic, this is just developing it. But in this development phase, definitely try and figure out detailed plot beats. You don't want to be like, okay, I need to get my characters here. How? Don't get like that. You'll regret it. I am speaking from about 6 years of making comics experience. This is the first one that I've like advertised into the world and given to the world, but I've been making comic commissions and stuff for people for about 6 years, and I have always found that you will have a better time making a comic if you actually know it, love it, and live it. So just spend as much time as you want giving yourself to this comic and really, really caring about it. Talk to people about your characters. If you don't have people to talk to about your characters, talk to me. Drop in my comments. I am always happy to hear people tell me about their characters. Particularly, like, I talk to my like various different friend groups about their D&D characters all the time. Like, literally, if somebody just goes, I have an original character, I'm like, come on, throw them at me, tell me. What's their life like? Do they have a love interest? Do they have friends? Like, do they have a tragic backstory? I love a good tragic backstory. Yeah, but this is pretty much meaning that you're off. Once you've done all of this process, you have, honestly, almost too much development. This is the level of development I like to use. It's really extra. All you really need to do is develop your characters, develop your plot, and know what your characters actually look like. And just go, have fun. Making comics is a labour of love. Comic books are not a financially viable thing to get into, really, unless you get really, really popular, like really popular. I'm looking at you, Laura Olympus. You're probably not going to make money off of comics, but you know, you gotta have fun. Comics are a passion project for me. I love making them, and I hope that you guys will maybe like reading it, and I hope this was helpful. I feel a bit philosophical, but comics make me happy, and the idea that my comics might make even a couple of people happy is really, really nice for me. Here's the self-plug. If you haven't read my webcomic, I Am a Criminal, it's on Webtoon. I will have it in the description below. And yeah, just give it a go. I hope you'll like it. A lot of my fan base are into anime, into LGBT stuff. There's very pretty boys and very pretty girls, and they kiss each other. What's not to love? As a young LGBT person, I love reading comics like that, and I hope you guys will too. There's lots of fun plot if you're not into romance and things like that. All the characters have really, really interesting backstories that I'm going to reveal slowly through the plot. And there is bigger stuff going on. There's a whole Gods and Monsters business going on. So yeah, please read my webcomic. I would love it if you would. And as always, please remember to be creepy. And good luck making your own webcomics. It's going to be so much fun. You guys are going to love it. Trust me. Just start developing. Just go. You can do it.